Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to your post-match Raw on AI Pro. We're currently live on Discord as well, so welcome to anyone listening live, and welcome to you if you're listening delayed on the podcast. I am podcasting to you from a field here in beautiful rural Ireland, and I'm still Trev Downey. And joining me to give their immediate reactions to Villarreal 2, Liverpool 3 for a 2-5 overall win for the Reds in the second leg of the Champions League semi-final from the Estadio de la Ceramica, are Dave Hendrick and Karl Matchett. One of the maddest games I can recall, Dave, in terms of the contrast on display. For all that we were wretched in that second half, we were right back at it. I honestly, I'm looking at my notes here, there's almost nothing of note from them in the second half. It's really that perfect example of that oldest of football cliches, isn't it?
It is massively, Trev. We should start by giving massive kudos to the manager, who made big calls pre-game and then decided at half-time to trust the world-class footballers, the best players that he has, by leaving them on the pitch. And by those, I mean Thiago, Fabinho and Naby Keita in the middle of the park. Because if Twitter or your phone or your computer could give off a scent, LFC Twitter would have smelt of urine at half-time. The collective bedwetting that went on, and the demands for change and the demands to sell certain players were an embarrassment. But Klopp knew what he was doing, made the change that needed to be made, because it was obvious in that first half. The biggest problem we had was we just couldn't get out. Nobody in the front line could hold the ball up.
Yeah, it wasn't sticking anywhere.
Wasn't sticking anywhere. And the midfield was getting overrun because their two fullbacks were just running off the back of our forwards as the ball bounced off Jota and Mane, who decided to play a game of curbs instead of playing football in the first half. Their fullbacks joined the midfield. They already had 4 against 3 in there initially. So, of course, they were getting the advantage in midfield. They were swamping us 6v3. But the issue wasn't the midfield. The issue was the attack. Yes, the midfield could have done better when we had the ball, but they were getting overrun and harried. There was 2 men pressing every single one of ours. In the second half, I said it at half-time, as everyone else was melting down and demanding that each midfielder got taken off to bring on the captain, I said, the guy we're missing here is Bobby. Someone who'll hold the ball up and also someone that'll give us that extra man in midfield. We didn't have Bobby tonight. Instead, we had Luis Diaz, who held the ball up, who carried the ball, who drove them backwards, who brought the fight in the game to them. Every single time he got the ball, it was panic stations in the Villarreal defence. That kid was unbelievable when he came on tonight. I said before we signed him, this kid is a cross between Mane and Suarez. He is the most exciting footballer we have had since Suarez. He's different class. The midfield stepped up second half. The defence were able to get out. And we were unbelievably good in the second half. Unbelievably good. Yes, we were shocking in the first half. It's a European Cup semi-final away. They're going to be tough. And in fairness, lads, it's Liverpool. We can't get to a European Cup final or win a European Cup without at least one comeback.
Well, in that first half, you were able to see man-mountain superheroes like Robbo and Virgil misplacing passes, Thiago and Fab misplacing passes, forwards with the ball bouncing off them. And like you said, we needed a change. It was jumping out at me as well that Diaz needed to come on, because Diaz has one thing he's done since he started with the club is retain the ball, and that's what we needed. And tonight, we didn't need him necessarily to be Diaz that we've seen. We needed him to be Bobby with pace, and he did it. And that made all the difference. And I wouldn't mind, Karl, getting your immediate reactions as well before we get too deep into any specifics, because I mean, overall, the emotional roller coaster of it was fairly intense. I mean, I doubt I'm alone here and saying I'm fairly shattered after that, because it was so awful. I mean, we can't put too much of a gloss on it or try to narrow it down to any one specific thing. The passing was absolutely atrocious all across the park from all of our players in that first half. And the transformation then, just, with that one change and with a little bit of a restoration of whatever coherence we're used to seeing, it was a remarkable contrast. How are you bearing up after all that? Like I say, pretty traumatic 90 minutes to endure.
It was. I mean, look, I've spoken about this before. I think we're really, 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 really good as a team, and with that comes a kind of expectation that we're going to play that way all the time. We're going to dominate matches all the time. But like Dave just said, it's Champions League semi-final. You can't get to this stage and expect that you're just going to walk all over teams every single time. Now, I know that we did, obviously, in the first leg to a huge extent because of the way they set out and everything, but whoever you play, whichever side of the draw you're on or whatever, you're going to have to fight your way to the final if you want to get there. You're going to have to prove that you're the best in all different ways, and that includes coming up against adversity and overcoming terrible performances at times and doing enough across two legs. That's the point of this competition. So I'm not, although obviously it was a terrible, terrible first half, like as abysmal as it's been this calendar year for sure, I can't say that I'm angry or upset or even surprised to an extent that we struggled, maybe not quite to the extent that we did, but at any point, because it was always going to happen. What did this team have to lose? Villarreal at home in front of their own fans, biggest or second biggest game in their history, and they were 2-0 down. They had to go for it. So what do we expect? It's okay that our players were not at their absolute best for 45 minutes of the last month, when they still had enough fortitude and control from the coach and staff and belief in their own abilities and technical quality to overcome it by full time.
Can we also just take a minute as well, just to recognise Villarreal and what they've brought to the Champions League this season? Because I think because it's Liverpool who've played them, they've just been written off, and it's like, oh, look at Liverpool getting the easy draw. When Ajax got to a Champions League semi-final a couple of years ago, there was none of that. This Villarreal team would beat that Ajax team. This Villarreal team won the Europa League last year. They were a really good team with really good players throughout their squad. This team would beat that Ajax team, but when it was that Ajax team, all it was, what a great story, Ajax returning to the European elite. But because it's some small club from a rural part of Spain, people just want to write them off like some kind of imposters. It's the most bizarre thing I've seen. This Villarreal team deserve huge credit. That's a wonderful club with an incredible set of fans who are probably still there singing their hearts out for their heroes. They deserve huge credit. Like Karl said, 2-0 down in front of their home fans. They had to come out and give it everything. And they did. And it just wasn't enough because we're that good. But it took us being at our best in that second half or close to it. And people should recognise this wasn't some easy draw. We made it look easy in the first leg. Tonight they showed what they're all about, and we showed what we're all about in that second half.
For reasons of balance, I'm just going to add to your glowing tribute of Villarreal that I'd like to fight Coquelin and Lo Celso together.
Yes.
That's just a thing that I want to do. We should start by having a look at the teams as we usually do now, and we've kind of, I think, already talked around the Reds team by talking about how Jurgen went with what is nominally going to have the highest control midfield, and he went with Jota as opposed to Diaz. They were the choices, and Ibu Konate comes in instead of Joel Matip. They were the choices he made. I had a conversation with somebody recently. I've had a couple of conversations along this line. There is a certain element of, does it really matter when we've got loads of good lads in decent form playing well? It was always just going to be about who he preferred on the night. I will admit to being surprised that he went with Jota in the starting lineup as opposed to Diaz from the start. I think the game's different from the start if we have Diaz there, and it's not to denigrate Jota because he wasn't on his own and being able to not being able to influence the game. But I don't know if there's a huge amount more to say about it. If either of you want to add your tuppence worth on the Liverpool lineup, please do as we come to it. But let's start by looking at that Villarreal team, and on the night, as he did in the first leg, the goalkeeper Rulli, you've got to say he's an oddball, and he's probably central to the concession of the goals in a real way. And in any time we managed an attack, and they were precious few, let's be honest. I mean, I'm just looking at the stats there. It's 15 attempts by us to 5 by them. If we had 1 in the first half, that was it. I'd say if they had all their 5, I'd say in the first half. So we didn't really put him under any pressure. But when he came under pressure, you could see some odd decisions by that guy. He loves a punch. He loves to wander out of his area. In Foyth, they've got a lad who, some people remember from Spurs. He's got a lot of narc in him, fair play. Albiol, fair play to him, managed to foul Sadio Mane about 89 times in that first half and early in the second half, and not even get carded, I don't think. Pau Torres with a beautiful effort at halving Sadio towards the end of the half there, and Estupinian on the other side had a solid game as well, but they're a good unit. We've said that before. Lo Celso, Capu and Parejo could hardly have done worse than they did previously, and they all stepped up their game. The energy was very high. I thought Coquelin, Moreno, Dia. Moreno probably not able to influence the game the way he'd like to. Dia gets his goal, Coquelin gets his goal. On the bench, they have Asenio, Jorgensen, they've got Mario Gaspar, they've got Paco Alcacer, they've got Iborra, Chukwueze, Trigueros, Pena, Mandy, Moy Gomez, Pedraza, who came on as well with Aurier. Now, you guys had a good look at this in advance, so I want to get a take from both of you on them. Dave, we just heard you talk about how good they are. Karl, let me get your take on that club, Karl, and that particular team that they put out, and whether or not it was the best choice by Emery on the night.
Probably because Arnaud Danjuma wasn't there, so I wasn't expecting that. To be fair, they'd kept that one pretty quiet all the way through. Throwing in Moreno from the start was obviously their big gamble, but I think that was a direct consequence of not having Danjuma, to be fair. Did mention actually Boulaye in the scouted, and only briefly in passing, but I thought he played pretty well tonight in his hold-up play and his running of the channels. Gave Trent and Konate a few issues with just constant movement really, and quite good strength as well. The rest of it was pretty much as expected. Very, very narrow 4 in midfield, hard work and tucking in every time they could. Coquelin, oh my God, I'm on team Trev for your start of the pod statement there. He was a pain in the ass all night long. Nothing really to add apart from I think Manu Trigueros is a really, really good player. I think as a central midfielder, maybe even one of their tucked in ones, he's maybe a better option to play for them, but you can kind of see why they wanted Coquelin given what he did tonight in terms of the break and play up and being a general annoyance, and also scoring a goal, which is a very, very rare occurrence. I don't think he was in the team for that.
Yeah, it was an interesting lineup, and Dave, to let you get specific on individuals as opposed to in general around the club, which you were just speaking about, they showed up in a big way tonight. Now, it is a combination. It is a combination of the fact that we were unusually, like stunningly lax in our passing, like so atypically so that it was almost amusing if it wasn't so absolutely fucking enraging. But a huge amount of credit has to go to them, because I don't think I've seen a team as energetic and aggressive against us for constantly for 45 minutes as that half by them, and that's a lot of credit to the personnel that were on the park.
It is, but at the same time, Trev, if we look back at that first half, we had massive opportunities. We didn't create anything from them, but they were leaving themselves wide open down our right, their left, and we played a bunch of balls over the top for Salah, and either the pass was too long or Mo couldn't get it under control. in a normal game, you feel like that aggressiveness from them comes back to haunt them and we get a couple of opportunities and at least a goal. But everybody was off it in the first half. They were right up for it. Emery had rested a bunch of players at the weekend. He kept, I think Pereiro started, Torres started. I want to say that's actually it, maybe, that started at the weekend. Maybe Dia started, I can't remember. But you could tell their lads were fresh and they flew into the game. And they were aggressive. Pereiro, Capoue and Coquelin just constantly harrying our lads. Estupin and Foyt stepping up into midfield. Moreno finding little pockets in behind, but also pressing Fabinho from behind. So Fab never got a chance to settle on the ball. Thiago didn't get a chance. Naby didn't get a chance. Naby didn't help himself with at least one very questionable pass in the wrong direction. But someone tweeted, and I want to give credit, but I can't find it. It may actually have been Karl. Liverpool are rattled when Thiago tries to play a simple 10-yard pass to Andy Robertson and puts it straight out of play. And that sort of summed up our first half. We couldn't do the basics right. So when we tried to do anything over the top or fancy, we were getting that wrong as well. But look, massive credit has to go to them. I was stunned that Moreno started because all the reports were, if he can come on for 20 minutes, that's probably it. The Danjuma thing that obviously kept quiet, but credit to Henry Jackson. He had it in his 10 things to know before this game piece on This is Anfield. He had that this morning. I'm not sure where he got that info or how he got that info, but he had it anyway. So that was the first I realised that Danjuma wasn't going to be available. And that was, I thought, brilliant. No Danjuma. Moreno's not fit to start. They've no one to play up front. And then Moreno turns up and he has a really good 45. His flicks and his tricks are coming off and he's linking play and giving them their out ball so they can play into him. He can hold it up and bring players in. Whereas at the other end, we were lumping it up to the Chuckle Brothers, who were just gifting it back to them, and they were just swamping forward on top of us again. It was such a mad first half.
Yeah,
I don't know that we'll see a collection of players as good as that Liverpool team in the first half ever play as badly as that again.
I honestly don't.
We still could have had something because they were leaving themselves wide open down their left.
We could have, but the reality is that the chances were spurned because of bad technique, which was the story of the first half. A very interesting performance from our Dutch pal, Danny McKelly, in the centre of the park, blowing his whistle. I honestly don't know what to make of this lad. He, to me, looks like the average accountant who hits the gym on the weekends and has that swagger about him that he looks as if he's just basically so assured in everything that he says. I guarantee he's got stock tips. He can tell you who's going to win in Newmarket. He's just one of them lads. And I have to say,
his Twitter bio, Trev, says financial trader.
No way. I was right.
I don't know if it does. I'm joking, but it's a financial trader / gym fanatic / outdoorsman. That's the type.
100%. Yeah. Hit me up for crypto advice in the side in brackets as well. I'm interested in him as a character, but he got a lot of calls wrong tonight, and he was trying to let the game flow at times and making a balls of it. I think they got away and got indulged far too much with wild tackles, which on another night could have left our squad decimated, I'll be honest with you. And we'll talk about that as we go. We might as well get into the details of the match itself. And Karl, we'll start, you and I, because the game starts in a very dramatic fashion with them getting the early goal in 3 minutes via Dia. It's Estupinan with a ball in from the left. Capoue gets there on the far side and on the blind side of Robbo to centre the ball, and Dia moving in from the far side sweeps the ball home. That's a nice move and it's a well executed move, but you'd have to say there are issues all around the Liverpool team there when it comes to the concession of it. I'd be interested in your take before you and I go on and look at a few more moments in the first half of the first half.
This was very, very early on in the game, and yet it was not in the first 2 or 3 things that I'd picked out that we were not doing very nicely at all. There was already a couple of things in midfield where we weren't really quite at it in terms of the first touch. The pass wasn't in the normal direction. You know how we have this real evident patterns of play that we have through midfield. You can identify immediately that it's a Liverpool move because it goes into, let's say, Fabinho and then to one of the side centre-backs, and then it's a switch across to the other side of the pitch, and then we're out down with the opposite fullback. None of this happened in the first few minutes. It was everybody's first touch looked a little bit heavy. That didn't just look quite the same energy that they had, obviously. And then for the goal itself, I mean, we'll go through the other one obviously later on, but they were basically the same. They were give the ball away, not put pressure on the ball, not stop the cross, and not attack the arrival of the ball. Slightly different finishes for the goals themselves, but both of those were the same thing. So I think the bigger issue there was also, I'm not sure how it happened. I looked at the replay 2 or 3 times, and I still am not sure. But Konate and Van Dijk actually got swapped over at some point. So we had Konate on the left of the two, and it wasn't exactly a great positional alignment for the pair of them either. But then I'm not sure if it was because of that Van Dijk doesn't spot coming back across him after the header goes back across goal, or the first touch goes back across goal. So it was a mess all around. It wasn't really well set out. It wasn't, obviously we hadn't really got ourselves into a rhythm at any stage of that. I'm not really sure why Ali ended up in the back of the net either, unless it was just because he thought Kapur was going to take the shot first time. And I kind of think that he was trying to as well. It looks like it comes off his heel, but he's maybe trying to steer it back across goal into the far post. But either way, it was a great start for them. Really, really bad for us, and not just because it ended up in the back of the net, but just because of where everyone was on the pitch.
Well, let's stick with it, you and I, and look at a few incidents as well. Right up, we'll take at least the first half of the first half. Before I give Dave the joy of talking about their second goal, because on 10 minutes, one of those sort of half attempts, efforts, possibilities occurs where Jota gets onto a Robbo free kick, but the contact on it is just sort of, it's almost as if he doesn't see it till the last minute. There's one with Sadio, is almost identical later on from a Trent free kick, and it just sort of dribbles wide. Thiago then hits the bar after Naby Keita had won the ball in their box. It works its way to Thiago. It's a good hit, but that's at 14 minutes. But the ref calls for a foul by Naby Keita, and I thought that was harsh, I'll have to say. 15 minutes, we needed a really decent Naby Keita clearance after a Moreno header at Robbo was breaking into a dangerous situation there in our box. There was a bit of a token effort by Naby on 17 minutes with a couple of lads he could have played in instead of taking the poor shot he took. And Coquelin at this stage has gone down 3 times at least at this point. He's diving around like an absolute clown. Lo Celso was very guilty of this as well. Capu tried a few, but he was more kind of leaving a bit on in tackles. And then on 23 minutes, Jota got played in by Mo Salah. It was a bad touch, but Mo got onto it to rob the keeper and shoot wide. There's no foul, and yet a foul is given. The first of many questionable Danny calls at this point. Again, Coquelin, again, Lo Celso acting like rats at this stage in the game already. And then I think by about half-hour mark, which is where we'll leave it, I've made a note here that Albiol had either fouled quite cynically or gone in pretty hard through the back of Sadio Mane at least 4 times, and not even free kicks only given, I think, on 2 of those occasions. Certainly no yellow cards. So it's a bit like what Dave was saying. We had opportunities where we could have done something, but our technique was sort of universally awful throughout the team, and they had momentum and energy and all those things you would expect. As you said very eloquently earlier on, you would expect a team in their position to have. They displayed them, and that's probably a half decent summary of that first half hour, Karl.
Yeah, I think so. Kind of with you on the Jota Salah opportunity foul. I don't think there was anything there at all. I wonder whether he gave it thinking that maybe Jota pushed Albiol into the keeper. That was the only thing that I could come up with that was not even maybe happened, but it didn't. I really didn't like the way that Rui and I think it was Albiol as well came over to Salah and started having a go at him that he kicked the ball out of his hands. It was never near his hands. In fact, it was never near Rui's hands all game long. So I don't know what they were complaining about for that. It was obviously just a attempt to unsettle or intimidate him or whatever. Didn't really seem to do anything at all. I wasn't that bothered by it, just hands up or whatever. But look, all during that period, aside from the fact that a few of the direct passes did put us in behind their defence because they were playing a lot higher upfield than I would have expected them to be with that defence. They obviously were on the front foot and they were trying to keep us under pressure and all that. That's fine, but they weren't dropping off very quickly. So a few of those direct passes being a little bit better, like we saw a Virgil ball from deep, which is usually pinpoint. It just went straight. There was no angle on it. It went straight. Otherwise, we could have been in. Trent with a couple of them over the top, which normally we would have been in. He would have put a bit of backspin on them as well, and he didn't. So we should have done a little bit better, but I think that those passes were just symptomatic or representative, if you like, of that first half of the first half where it was lacking control and we didn't really have any composure to our game. We were probably unsettled by how aggressive they were, and it did feel like not everything went against us. I wouldn't say that. I don't think it was against us to that extent, but I don't think we made it easy for ourselves either. There was a lot of simple things we could have done, a lot of opportunities that we had to start replicating those patterns I was talking about, going from one centre back to the other side of the pitch and building down there like we do, and we didn't. We tried to go direct, we tried to go long, we tried to force the issue a little bit too much. The midfielders were definitely off their game in terms of passing and the first touch and the spaces that they move into. I think Thiago, the only time he really did that sort of iconic shoulder drop that he does sometimes to get away from a challenge coming from behind him, he did get away from him and then pass the ball straight out of play. And that was kind of summed up that first half for me.
It really did. That moment stuck with me as well, I have to say. It was like, are we? It was that exactly thing. Yeah. My podcast chum, Jan Mulby, always says, lads, that, if you're having a bad game, what you do is you just strip it back and you start doing the simple things and you make sure that you get them right. And so you stop trying adventurous passes and you just make sure you make your pass clean to the person beside you or whoever you're aiming at. And that's really... that collective mindset needed to take hold, and it didn't. And Dave, like, the second half really ends on a downer because, and feel free to harken back to anything you want to talk about that we've already sort of gone through, because there are a couple of things here that happen at the end of the second half. First of all, we need Ali to be absolutely brilliant in a 1v1 versus Lo Celso. I think it's the right hand side of the midfield. I think it was Naby who got caught in possession. The ball broke anyway. There's a nice through ball played. Lo Celso's in, and Ali is absolutely fan-bloody-tastic. He waits, he drops at the right moment and makes sure that he gets to the ball first. And to be fair to Danny McKelly, he gets it. He calls it right, and that was a big decision. And it could have gone to VAR if he had bottled it. And then you don't know what's going to happen. It'd be one of those ones they could have been looking at for 79 hours. But they did actually seem to, they had to check it and they seemed to get it right as well. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, before you know it, on 40 minutes, it's back level. I think we did have a chance towards the end, but it didn't matter because we were offside and it was very anticlimactic. The second goal for them is from, of all people, ex-Arsenal man Coquelin. I'm going to call it here. I think it's mostly on Robbo. This, he loses the ball on the left, an absolutely terrible ball down the side. One of those ones that he makes with ease. But it's not like he's the only one. But it was particularly shit pass. Coughs up possession. They come back at us. Now, as they come back at us, Capoue is on that flank, and Robbo, for reasons, decides to back off like he's staggering back half drunk. He gives him plenty of space. Capoue cuts back onto his left foot, swings it over, and Trent is sort of very flat-footed as Coquelin gets a nice contact to head it way into the left-hand corner of the net as he's facing it, leaving Ali absolutely stranded. There's a lot going on, like there was with the first one, that I'd like to hear your take on, Dave, in around the concession of that goal.
Yeah, I'd put it basically squarely on Andy Robertson. Before we signed Andy Robertson, when you watched him play for Hull, he wasn't necessarily a good defender, but what he was really aggressive. I think that's what really drew Liverpool to buying him, was how aggressive he was in his defensive work and the effort that he put in. And that was just really lazy defending. Really, really lazy defending. It's Etienne Capoue. Like, you can't get beaten by Etienne Capoue, and you can't just back off him and let him cross like that. He's not Neymar or Messi or somebody. Like, it's Etienne Capoue. He's made his career out of kicking people in midfield, and you've just made him look like prime Ruud Gullit. Like you said, the pass is so poor, and the pass, a bit like the Thiago one I mentioned earlier, kind of just summed up where we were at this moment. He does really badly on the ball, then he does even worse off the ball. It's a good cross by Capoue. Trent, yeah, like you said, he got flat-footed. He seemed completely surprised by the arrival of Coquelin over his shoulder. Let's give the two Villarreal boys credit. It's good work from Capoue. It's a good cross, and it's a really good run and a good header by Coquelin, but it's entirely of our own doing. Like, there's nothing there that we can prevent quite easily, and that we don't prevent in most games. But for whatever reason, we just seemed shell-shocked. It just seemed like our lads were walking around in a bit of a daze, and that was sort of, my thinking at half-time as well. Klopp doesn't need to bollock these lads.
Do you remember the World Cup final where Ronaldo, like the real Ronaldo, the proper Ronaldo, who was without doubt the most scary attacking threat in world football, came out and he was like a zombie.
Yeah, 98. He had the 90 before or something.
Yeah. And he was just, you couldn't understand what was going on with the lad. It was
like he was drugged or something.
Like he was drugged. And I felt that if the story had broken afterwards, that, well, listen, we were keeping it quiet, but basically all the lads had a terrible dose of the shits for the last 48 hours because of the food that we ate, or food poisoning or something, because they were so off it that I was assuming there was going to be some story that would break. They were trying to keep quiet. It was that level of weird how bad it was.
It was. It genuinely was. Like, everything was wrong. They weren't snapping into tackles. They weren't snapping the passes to each other. When they did snap them to each other, they just overhit them by a million miles. There was a couple of really bad passes in that first half that were simple passes, like simple balls through the line. I've been watching Thiago play for well over a decade now, and I'm not sure I've ever seen him misplace some of the passes that he did tonight. Like, he was the kind of, on the ball, he was the most 98 Ronaldo-esque, just like as if he was just on complete autopilot. I'm glad you mentioned the one-on-one with Lo Celso, because Ali is just phenomenal. Now, Naby is dreadful. I don't know whether it's a pass that he overhits to Fabinho or a pass that he underhits to the centre-backs, but either way, he just gifted it straight to them. But Ali's just phenomenal. And how often have we seen him this season in 1v1s just come up massive? That's why we paid a world record fee for him at the time. That's why we gave him a big new contract in the summer. He is the best in the world. Like, you can name whoever you want. And I love the likes of Oblak, even if he had a bad season. But Becker is just on a different planet to them all right now. And the funniest thing was, Lo Celso was crying about it. It was his own bad touch that sort of stopped him getting the ball. If he'd been able to lift the ball past Ali, he might have gotten the penalty. But he actually scuffs his touch, and Ali just comes out and takes everything. And then it winds me up. Lo Celso lies on the floor, rolls around for a little bit, gets up after a bit of treatment, walks with a limp, quite a pronounced limp, round behind and over to the touchline. And then as soon as the referee tells him to come on, he comes running back on like he's grand, not a bother to him, no limp, everything's fine. And then starts giving the referee an earful.
Magic sponge, mate.
That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. But
well, the magic sponge must have been broken out at half time, because let's just talk about this. I'll get a take from both of you. Because Dave, when you were chatting about it earlier on, I'll start with you. When you were chatting about it earlier on, you were talking about, okay, there's if you really do want to break it down to one particular thing that's really sort of hamstringing us, it's the fact that the ball can't stick at the top end of the pitch. So you'd have to say hats off to Kloppo for getting that shout right in terms of getting a man on the park who could do that and who could then carry the ball forward and actually create a little bit of a threat. That's number one. Number two was, those midfielders were so particularly awful. And so you can understand certain people saying, well, we might want to change it up here. But again, just to echo the point you made earlier on, a little bit of credit has to go to the manager again, because he showed faith in the people who he knew he had selected because they could fucking play the ball and control the midfield, and they started to do it. So there was you could look at it as a gamble, Dave, or you could look at it as a kind of faith in the fact that he knows what he's got with those guys.
Well, here's the thing: if it was one of them playing poorly, I could understand, take him off, bring someone else on. But it was the collective. And that tells me it's not an individual issue. It's a team issue. So why is the midfield struggling now? If they're all struggling, it's not because one of them's playing badly. It's because the whole team is struggling. So you start looking for reasons. Well, number one, look how deep our defensive line is. Why is our defensive line that deep? Because every time we try and get the ball out, it comes straight back. Number two, our midfield constantly looks out of position. Well, why do they look out of position? Well, because every time we attack, we turn the ball over really easily, and now they're having to shuttle back into position. So you could break it down to what the problem was. The ball was not sticking up front. There was no out ball for us. There was no way to relieve a bit of pressure, no way to do what we always do, which is just take 2-3 minutes off the clock. Let's just knock it round. Let's calm things down. Instead, it was like we were kicking the ball against the side of the house. It was up and straight back at us with a bit more force. And our midfield was basically having to play 2 games at once. So credit to Klopp. Like, as I said, again, you've got a lot of people saying, oh, he'll tear into them at half time. No, he won't, because that's not what's needed here. What's needed here is a calming voice. What's needed here is the arm around the shoulder and the reaffirmation that, lads, you're brilliant footballers. What are you doing here? You're making yourselves look bad. We know there's no lack of application in our team. So screaming at them doesn't help.
Exactly. It's not an attitude problem, is the point, isn't it?
That's the thing. I saw people saying, oh, the attitude's all wrong. And I thought, what are you watching? You're not watching the game. You're watching the scoreline. Because here's the thing, right? If that second goal goes in, or doesn't go in, rather, we go in at halftime 1-0. Have we played any better or worse? No. But the perception is much different. That's why I always say, if you're going to watch a game back to accurately judge it, watch it without the goals. You can go on Y-Scout and you can remove the goals from large clips of games. Do that. And look at the actual fundamental issues that are happening here. Look at where the problems are and then eliminate the problem. And unfortunately for Diogo Jota, because it could just as easily have been Mane, they were the biggest problem, because every time the ball went into them, they just coughed it straight back up. Now, Mane at least has that aggressive nature about him to go and win it back. And if you were going into a scrap, if you were walking into a dark alley, and you knew there was some, ruffians at the other end, one of the lads in our team that you'd want with you is Sadio, because you know that boy is fearless, and you know he'll be right up there, right up for the scrap. You'd want Virgil for a bit of height. You'd want Fabinho because he's a tough, gnarly bastard. You'd want Robbo because everybody needs a Robbo in their gang. Here's the thing, right? You don't need, in a scrap like tonight, when you go behind, you don't need 11 lads. What you need is 3 or 4 absolute motherfuckers. 3 or 4 bastards who will be more than happy to dig in with you. And that's what we got tonight. We had those bastards in our team, and they came out in the second half. And Diaz has a bit of that about him as well. He gets on, and he's going at that right back. And not only that, he's needling him as well. And he's starting to get at the referee and chat to the referee. He can't stop me. He's pulling me back. He can't stop me. He's pulling me back. And all of a sudden, Foyt's head goes completely. And he's charging in on Diaz. And Diaz is skipping by him in a way down the line. This is the type of mentality you need. You don't need to be bringing on passion merchants, which is what people were crying out. That wasn't a game for passion. That was a game for fight. And it was a game for calm heads. And that's what we got second half. And that's what Klopp will have given them at half time. The calming voice. Lads, we've been here. We know how it is to win a Champions League semi-final. You were 3-0 down against Barcelona with Lionel Messi playing out of his mind. You came back. We've done this over and over and over again. That's all they needed to hear. And you could see it in them. They came out second half and there was a different focus about them.
Yeah.
And they came out backing themselves. Klopp backed them. They backed themselves. And it was night and day.
And Karl, just to give you a chance to talk about that particular intervention, because it is, as Dave says, night and day, and you and I are going to talk about the run up to the first goal and the first goal of the second half in a minute. But as you were watching that, I mean, were you thinking, because I think an awful lot of people could be forgiven for thinking, oh, listen, there's an awful lot of people, and kind of front and center, because he's always so looking to get on the ball and make these passes, was the likes of Thiago, and you could see that Jurgen had played the other two lads there in the team in the most recent game, and I think it would have been understandable. An awful lot of people would have thought he probably needs to change it up in midfield as well. Were you one of those, or had you a different sort of plan in mind, or were you as well equally screaming for Diaz like we were?
Diaz, yeah. First of all, I think he should have started anyway. But
Agreed.
Besides the point, like we should be okay with whichever of the forwards we do start with. We're fortunate enough to have 5 really good ones of different types, at least 5. In midfield, I was surprised Henderson didn't start, but not because of performance style or playing style or anything like that. Just looking at the Newcastle game and the fact that both Keita and him started, they've been the two who have been rotated regularly, and it was Henderson who played fewer minutes and Keita played the whole 90. So normally we would then see Naby not play this one, or at least not from the start. I don't think it was necessarily a case of needing to make a change in midfield at half time for personnel or anything like that, because people like Thiago and Fabinho, Keita, even Henderson, to be perfectly honest, if they have a rubbish first half in any game, any weekend or whatever, they haven't got to that point in their career because of one really good half. It's doing the same things over and over again in training every week, every day, and in the trust of the coaches and the managers and the teammates and all the rest of the thing. And because they work in the team, when you're in a successful team, it's because you do it very, very well over and over again. And as obviously as supporters, we that both the greatness and the weakness of us is that we look at the result and we have to get the result, and that weekend's result makes us happy or not for that week. And that's kind of what you look at. That's what you want to happen in that hour and a half, in whatever period of time it is that you're looking for a sub or a goal or a result, And so it is natural that, yes, you look for things must change, but personnel isn't always the first way that a coach or anybody, in fact, probably even the players themselves wouldn't even be looking for subs straight away. They would know that there would be issues in the game that they weren't doing in the first half. Like I keep saying, the patterns of play that we didn't see in the first half, and then we saw about 15 times in the first 10 minutes, probably not even 10 minutes in the second half. That's what we weren't doing. It's not that the people are different. It's not that the people weren't playing. It's not that Henderson instead of Keita or Henderson instead of Fabinho or anyone. Whichever of them were playing would have been looking to do those same patterns of play. Playing in the same way, getting the ball in the same areas of the pitch, making the runs into the same spaces, because that's what they do week in and week out. And it doesn't matter which ones of them play in midfield or up front. It doesn't matter if it's Matip or Konate. They still do things in the same area when everybody is in form and playing well. And that's what has made us win all those games. So it isn't just a matter of personnel. And Klopp has just now said after the game, I just had a quick listen to what he was saying there. And aside from the, talking about Villarreal and everything, he said the reason for bringing Diaz on was not because of a Jota performance, but to get people doing things in different areas of the pitch. Mane obviously drops a little bit deeper, but we didn't want to push Dani Parejo quite so high upfield. He was getting on the ball a little bit too close to their forwards, he was saying, so they wanted to almost stand the opposite side of him as such. So to force him in between the centre backs, make him have the ball a little bit deeper. He said he went to Peter Kravitz and said, we know we're not doing the patterns of play very, very well. Go and find one that we did in the first half perfectly. Show them what we need to do again. And Kravitz came back and said, come find one. There wasn't one there in the first half. So it was literally a matter of showing them what they weren't doing. And that's what we had to get back to doing, obviously. It's what training is for all week long. We don't see that side of it, but that's what we do. It's practicing those movements and practicing where you pick up the ball and where your automatic passes have got to be repetitions. It sounds dead boring, but that's how you become a really, really cohesive team. And that's what we got back to doing in the second half. Subs have nothing to do with it.
You're so right, because the proof of that is in the way that this second half pans out. The change is made, Diaz for Jota. And on 48 minutes, there's a repetition of that one we saw in the first half where I think it was Jota had a little bit of a dribble connection with a free kick. This time it was Sadio who couldn't get much of a touch on a Trent free that dropped across a load of heads onto his foot, and he just couldn't direct it. It was almost an instinctive stick your leg out thing. Torres then, really interesting, took Trent completely out of it. Trent was at full stretch and crossed the ball. Torres comes through him after Trent has kicked the ball. I'm sorry, but in anyone's language, that's a penalty. We didn't even talk about it. BT didn't want to talk about it. No outrage about it. I was assuming that when I saw the replay, I'd see a situation where either Torres had played the ball or something like that, but no, he just cleans him out of it after Trent has crossed the ball at full stretch out of play. Weird moment. Feel free to chat about it if you want to, but now we start to see this Liverpool proper start. Trent puts a cross for Rulli, who has to punch it away. He shouldn't do that. Then there's an easy one that Trent puts into him to catch about a minute later in 53 minutes. But now we start really going for it. Trent hits the bar on 54. A free kick is rolled to him. He drives one at goal. Coquelin deflects it onto the bar. But we are back in the game on the night and ahead in the tie when Fabinho, of all people, scores in 61 minutes, Karl. It's a far better spell. That spell of football between that chance that I just described on 56 and the goal itself in 61. We are dominating. We're doing all those things you were talking about, those patterns of play you alluded to. It was good possession football from the Reds, and Fabinho found himself played in on the right. I think it was by Mo Salah. He looked up and across because obviously it's Fab. He's on the right hand side of the box. The first thing he's going to think of is, I better pass this, and then decides to drive it straight at goal and drives it at the keeper. And unfortunately for him, it goes underneath him between his legs and into the back of the net. It was a moment of massive relief, and it actually felt very transformative, Karl, as a moment because of how dominant we were for that first, whatever that is, 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was a little bit different, I suppose, that it was Fabinho who got into that position, but basically that's exactly what we'd been looking to do, isn't it? Get the ball into those number 8 sort of areas, looking for the fullbacks to get on the ball in those kind of areas where they can cross or they can play the 1-2 and get in behind or whatever it is. So we had a different runner that time, which maybe actually leads to the big opening, because obviously Keita would normally be making that run or Salah would be making that run, and maybe they were occupied by the defenders from those zones anyway. So really intelligent if that's the case from Fabinho to make that run into the gap. I like the fact that he said after the game, I was going to put it across because I was screaming at him to play it first time, low to the back post, and you just want, I think it was Mane sliding in there. But yeah, really, really nice finish. Just basically leathered it, I think, as hard as he could. I don't think there was too much finesse or intent about it other than get it on target, and maybe the goalkeeper gambles that it's going to be across anyway and leaves that post exposed. Rui, this is what he is, he's been this for years. He's a really good shot stopper in terms of reflexes, and, if things are coming at him at an awkward height, and he's very bouncy and he's got decent stretch if he's jumping through the air and all the rest of it. We see that later on, for example, with the Curtis Jones shot, but his decision-making has never been that good. His basics, I suppose you can call them sometimes, leaves a bit to be desired. And at the very least, for two of the goals tonight, I think, but this one as a starting point, you can't be doing what he's done. It's fairly routine. I think what he should be doing there. It's not the most difficult of efforts. I'm very, very glad it was him.
Yeah, you've got to stand up.
Can I play devil's advocate here?
Go on.
Because I don't think it's as bad as that from him. Now, it's bad. Look, he should do better. But Fab looks across the box as if he's going to cross it and then glances at the keeper and realises he's trying to set his feet. I just think it's really clever from Fab. I don't think Rooney expected him to shoot from there. I think he looked at him and saw him look across at the cross and thought, he's going to cross this. And he was trying to get his feet ready to move back across the goal, and Fab just catches him. He should do better, but I don't think it's...
But that's what's wrong for me. That's what's wrong for me. You don't gamble. You got to hold your ground. That's
I know, but I agree. And we know he's not a great goalkeeper. We know this is what he is. He's scattergun. He's very, very unpredictable and unreliable. But one of the things that has worked for him to get him to this point in his career is that he does gamble and he does take chances. And more often than not, they actually work out for him. But this is why he's not at a top club. This is why he's at, with respect, a Villarreal. It's because he is too unreliable in situations. But I just think Fabinho does really well. I think Fab just gives him the eyes, has a glance, and leathers it.
Yeah, it's definitely credit to Fabinho there, no question about it. Even just for the run, like I said, to get into that position to exploit the space that was left there. And then when you're in that position, there's nothing wrong with going for it. You don't buy a ticket, you don't get the rewards, do you? So we needed something to happen, and we already know that from the first leg, it took us a lot of really, really carefully constructed typical moves, and it still took us a bit of a lucky deflection to take the lead anyway. So trying something out of the ordinary, 100% behind that.
I don't have the half by half breakdown, but just looking at my notes here, I think the truth of what the feeling that I had is borne out by them. I think there may be one dangerous cross at one stage by who the hell was it? I can't remember, but it was a cross, an in-swinging cross, and I think that's as close as they get to a chance, because they've to take it on from that point with you. Etienne Capoue picks up a yellow for a late challenge on Fab at 63 minutes. This will become important later, kids. 65 minutes, Diaz skips inside Voith. And then does Capoue as well, and his shot deflects off Albiol and hits the post, and you're just going, this is the magic man, this is the guy we want. He's creating absolute chaos from that corner. Actually, Ibu Konate heads very narrowly wide, so we're racking up the chances now, we're racking up the opportunities, and just a minute later it is 2-2, and it is Diaz. Trent had cut in on the right hand side, cut back and swung one in with his left foot. Beautiful shape on it. Diaz with the header. It's a weird connection that he makes with it, and yet again it seems to go underneath and between the legs of the keeper. And we're not going to worry about the aesthetics of it, because we're bouncing now, because we're in the final. That's it. The game is over now, and that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And when you think about the turnaround there, you think about the dominance from the very beginning of that half, the possession football, the imposing of our style on it, the character shown by those guys who had stunk the place out to get back on the ball and do the simple things like I was talking about earlier on. That's the reward you get. And yes, of course, you add in the chaos merchant, the magic man, and that works and that helps. But it's more about just the consistency of excellence in doing those basic things right, isn't it?
It is. Like, our greatness is built on our fundamentals. Manchester United dominated English football for decades, for 2 decades. Not because of individual brilliance, but because they were unbelievably good at the fundamentals. They played it really simple. and they just did things better than the opposition. And as I said, that's all Klopp had to get into our lads. Just do your fundamentals. You know your patterns of play. You know what you're meant to do. You know where you're meant to be. You know what runs you're meant to make. And you idiots know what passes you're meant to make. So just fucking make them. And in the second half, we did. And Diaz just, he had, at this point, he'd been on the pitch 20 minutes and he had just turned Juan Foyt from what was, looking like a dominant right back in the first half into a quivering mess who had no idea where he was meant to be. And, like you said, he cut inside, had that shot that took the big deflection and could have found its way in. And then he just times his run perfectly. It's a gorgeous little ball in from Trent, right foot, left foot. It doesn't matter if that lad does it. Like, his delivery is just second to none, absolutely second to none. Shout out to all the Chelsea fans tweeting about Reece James being better than Trent at halftime. Your boy dropped a 3 out of 10 against Everton at the weekend, and Anthony Gordon was made to look like George Best in his prime. So hush. Sensational cross. It's weird. It's a weird header, but it finds its way in, and that's the only thing that matters, is that it found its way in. And at that point, like you said, barring some catastrophic collapse, we were in the final. And again, we've got to give credit to Klopp here, because he makes the one change at halftime. It would have been easy for him on 55-60 to say, right, we're going to make another one here. We're going to bring on Henderson in midfield here because we've got an advantage now and we want a bit more drive from midfield. But he didn't. He just let these boys play. And when you let these lads play, that's the result you get. When they're in the groove and in the mood for it, they tear teams apart. And again, it's worth emphasising, that's a very good defensive team that we cut open constantly in that second half. Now, they got a bit ragged after the second goal went in. They really did open up and try and take the game to us, but we just kept taking the ball off them and turning it around and carving them up. So yeah, like Diaz was sensational when he came on, and as I said, he's so much fun, and then he's so fucking good at the same time.
I have to say a couple of things. I had a little moment because, I do admire his record immensely, but I did have a little moment at one point of thinking, is there really any need for that tie and that outfit, specifically that outfit, which makes the opposing manager look even more like Dracula? Do you know what I mean? Like,
I kind of hope he's just playing up to it at this point.
I really hope he is, because he's wearing that thing and it's got the club crest right in the middle of the tie and it looks like a medallion that Dracula's wearing. I'm thinking, dude, that's just okay, but fair play. And another, in terms of another managerial based comment I've just seen here, Jimbo Pierce has said that Klopp ended his press conference by saying, congratulations to Nat Phillips, by the way, because Bournemouth had secured promotion back to the Prem tonight. And of course, when you think about what Nat Phillips did to contribute to the fact that we're even in this freaking competition, I think, Trev,
you've gone wrong here. What you need to do is you need to open up your Twitter account and you need to tweet this exact phrase. Let's not forget, we wouldn't even be in the Champions League without these two. These two are the unsung heroes. And then a picture of Nat Phillips and Reece Williams. You're guaranteed 1,500 likes, about 250 retweets, and plenty of good comments. That's how you give real. Look, we can make it all about ourselves. Nico Williams went to Fulham and they won the championship. Nat Phillips went to Brentford and they finished second. As far as I'm concerned, neither of those things would have happened without our two players. So in theory, we've come first and second in the championship, as well as what we're doing. So, if we're going to make it about, we're always accused of making it about ourselves. So, we might as well continue to do it. We might as well lean into it.
Yeah.
No, to be fair, and I had the Forest Bournemouth game on the other screen. I was really hoping for a Forest win, but Bournemouth played really well, and Nat had himself a good game. So congrats to him, congrats to Nico, and hopefully, they'll those two work out permanent moves to those clubs, and now that they're both Premier League clubs, don't they get charged Premier League money now for those two players? So that'll be 15 million from you, Bournemouth, and probably 18 million from you, Fulham, because, you know, Nico's a Welsh international at this point, so that comes at a premium itself.
I will take both of those fees. Thank you very much. And Karl, like the dominance can't be understated for the remainder of the match. And what I liked about it was I think it was because they were probably so collectively traumatized by the first half. They just put their foot on the opposition's neck. We were just going for it till the very last whistle. We are 3-0 up after two subs come on for them, Madraza and Chukwueze, I think, for Coquelin and Moreno. And just as Lo Celso's diving around again, we go 3-2 up to make it 5-2 on aggregate. It is Sadio Mane. He's basically running onto a ball that's hit forward from he's running forward from his own half. They were checking it for offside, but, you know, he's in his own half as the pass is played. He runs onto it, manages to get past the keeper, then past Foyth, and then bury it with his left back the way he came from into the right-hand corner of the net. That was, Karl, the 139th goal of the season, a new club record which had been held for quite a while, I think, by Kenny's 85-86 team, if I'm not mistaken. It's a little bit of icing on a very strange cake. And before you and I see the match out and the one or two incidents that are left, just talk to me a little bit about the goal itself so that we can mark it, because it means we win the tie on the night, so it has a certain significance, Karl, that I like. It's like, you know, okay, we were awful and you gave us a bit of spanking in the first half, but here's how things really are. Like, you know, this team has done so often. So it does have a little bit of importance and it's worth marking.
Yeah, for sure. It's also a really long time since we'd actually won a Champions League or European Cup semi-final away from home leg. I read it before the match and I can't for the life of me remember what the last one was now, but you think of all the ones that we've got through under Jurgen, we've not won the away leg there. And
yeah,
you know, quite some time before that, even the Chelsea and that under Benitez, I don't think we won either of those away from home. So that's a bit of a marker in itself. 1984, someone says there in the chat. So thanks very much for that. So that's a nice thing in itself. I think, like Dave said, after the second goal, they had started to get really ragged, and, you know, leaving a forward to run from his own half and nobody's goal side of him, probably not ideal. Your goalkeeper 40 yards from goal, probably not ideal. And then Juan Foyth, with nobody in goal, can still block or direct Mane away from goal, or at least be in the way, opts to slide tackle him, again, not ideal. So, I mean, it was, you know, the tie was done by that point, but it was a kind of, you know, here's, like you say, here's the order of things. Here's, you know, how you can actually see off a game. I think we have to make the point as well. I'm still not 100% sure that when we came out after halftime, obviously we were going to try and do our thing, right? We were going to try and do all the things that I spoke about there in terms of the patterns and where we have the ball and all the rest of it. But I don't know how much was that and how much was their decision to sit back. Because at that point, they didn't have to chase the game. And I think that Emery and everybody else would have known that had they kept trying to play a really, really high tempo, had tried to still have possession high upfield and win the ball back as aggressively as they did, at some point they'd get caught. And one of those passes from Trent or Virgil or Thiago in the first half were going wrong, they would have gone right. And there would have been a finish at some point. So I don't know that they contributed to their own downfall as well by trying to maybe bed in, maybe not quite as much as they did in the first leg, but sitting back and being a little bit more attack-minded if they could, but, you know, not really going for it in the same way as they did. I think that was a big, big mistake from them. I don't know how much, like I say, was completely down to that, because obviously we were loads better and we were always going to be a bit better. But I will watch this back, but I think that they have harmed themselves here by taking that approach that they did in the second half.
I think you're dead right.
But I don't know if they could sustain that
Yeah,
for
exactly.
much
That's what I
longer,
mean. Like,
because by
you know,
the
if
end of
they
the
did,
first half, what's his face, the striker
Moreno.
Moreno
yeah,
was on one leg. I mean, he was walking by the end of the first half, and it's very, very difficult for 10 lads, for 9 outfield players to do that level of work for 10 players, because you're carrying a passenger. So I just, like, I think Carl's right. I think they had to sit back. I think they made what they thought was a calculated decision to sit back and maybe hope that we'd open up a little bit and they'd catch us on the counter. But as Carl said, we've got too many lads that are too good, and at one point or another, Trent, Virgil, Thiago, Naby, someone was going to catch them with a pass, open the defence up, and that was going to be game over.
Yeah,
It's pick your poison with Liverpool. It really
Yeah.
is. Come and attack us and see what happens on the counter. And with Diaz coming on, we were going to be more dangerous on the counter, or sit off us and let us come at you, and then you're in big trouble.
Well, what I liked about it, and I've said this already, is that the game's obviously dead. It was dead after the Diaz goal. It's stone dead after Sadio's goal. But what I liked about it was like our players were making a collective effort to exorcise the ghosts of that first half, because, okay, Trent picks up a yellow, I think, on 76 minutes, but that also marks this solitary moment in the second half where from the free kick, there's a Danny Parejo in-swinger that goes narrowly-ish wide of Ali's left post. I'm sure he gets to it if he needs to. But that's the closest that they get to any kind of attacking effort in that second half, unless I'm very much mistaken. And that just shows the dominance. They bring on 2 more subs in 78. Like, it's kind of, what's the point at this stage? I think it might even be 3. I think they bring on Trigueros, Aurier, and definitely, I think somebody else came on as well. We brought on 3 too. Curtis, Hendo, Simicas all came on. Naby, Thiago, and Robbo going off. And within like a minute of being on the park, his very first touch, Curtis Jones has a shot stopped by the keeper's trailing leg. Henderson centres it to him, the other man who's come onto the pitch. And again, I'm not 100% sure about the keeper here, because he seems to be diving away from the ball, and it's almost more incidental that he stops it with his leg. But stop it he does, so that's all that matters. Lo Celso finally picks up a yellow card, which is well earned for going in late on Fabinho on 81. We bring on Milner for that man, Fabinho, 2 minutes later. Torres, with the wildest of challenges on Sadio, nearly halves him, as Sadio had skinned him on the turn, and he gets a yellow for it. Capoue picks up his second yellow for a late challenge in Curtis, and it's getting very wild, and you're just hoping nobody gets badly hurt before the game is over. 86 minutes, Henderson tries one from distance after a couple of blocking efforts by Mo and Diaz, and then on 89 it's a really good move. We're playing to the whistle, right down to the whistle again, like I said. And it ends with a really kind of disappointing effort from Salah when he had options elsewhere. So, just to get a final sum up from both of you then, because there's no point in going into too much of those incidents. They're almost non-events. Let me do the usual and finish up the show with your takes. Dave, I'll start with you. Overall takeaway from the match then, and anything you want to just mention that we haven't really gone into in any detail, and then just let people know what's going up for you in the week.
Trev, I've just seen this foam hand that has been released. I really want to buy one for Carl. No, I'm more a fan of the foam finger. The bigger hand with the one finger. I think that's a better look than these.
You'll be getting a slap around the face with it if you do.
If I can get your address, buddy, there's going to be one of them winging its way to your house. You best believe it. No, look. Like I said, we were as bad as we could be in the first half, and we came out the other side with a dominant second half performance that really and truly, we should have scored 5 in that second half. We missed a couple of good chances. The Curtis one, Henderson does really well with the cutback. And Curtis, if he put it anywhere else, it goes in. And the keeper will get credit for a save. But he dived clean over that ball. It was very, very lucky that it hopped up and hit him.
Yeah, blessed.
We seemed very desperate to get Mo a goal as well, and obviously I think that cost us a couple of good opportunities. But we were just different class second half. We were outstanding, and I think the Milnerson midfield combo was used really well tonight to just come on and see out a game. And that we've talked about Henderson taking over the Milner role. There's been talk that Milner might stay another year, and with 5 subs next year, I'm not against bringing the 2 of them on at the same time with 10, 15 minutes left just to see out games. Henderson with his running and his ability to pass the ball, and Milner with his ability to just volley people up in the air. I would have to say, very disappointed in James tonight. There was a prime opportunity to volley Giovanni Lo Celso all the way back to North London, and he let it slide. I think they got a little bit fortunate as well, because Pau Torres should have been sent off for the foul on Naby or on Mane on the halfway line. That's a blatant red card. Capoue, the poor fella, I feel sorry for him. Like he talked up Anfield and how it was like to play in hell. He was interviewed after, he was asked about it. He said it was like playing in hell. And then tonight he gets himself sent off and his team go out. So it's been a bad week for him. But what a great time for us. I mean, we've got 2 finals now to be excited about. We've got the league, and the league is going to be what it's going to be. Either we're going to win the league or we're going to finish second. And there's all we can do is win our games and hope that City drop points. And if they don't, then fair play to them. But we've got 2 finals now to be really excited about. And with a bit of luck, we'll have at least 3 trophies at the end of this season, if not 4. And what a season that would be. What a season. We're going to play every possible game this season. And more of this, Reds. Get 1 or 2 more in the summer, and more of this. Get to the late stages of them all, because it's so much more fun when you're competing on all fronts. It's so much more fun when you're late into the Champions League. And by the way, Virgil van Dijk joined Liverpool 4.5 years ago. He has played 3.5 seasons as a Liverpool player, because we don't count last year because he was out after 5 games. This is his 3rd Champions League final in 3.5 seasons. And the 1 season he didn't make the Champions League final, well, he led us to the most dominant Premier League title win of all time. So, what a player. Salah, 3 Champions League finals in 5 years. We're so blessed with this team. We're so blessed with Klopp. This is his 3rd Champions League final with us, 4th overall, counting the one with Dortmund. That matches Alex Ferguson's entire career total of Champions League finals, which is a hell of an effort. I think he's the first manager to ever reach the final of a Champions League, FA Cup and League Cup in the same season, which is a hell of an effort. And all things considered, this team is a different class, and we saw why tonight.
We really did, man. And last word from you on what people can expect from you during the week, just to let them know.
2-Footed Pod every day at 4 p.m, Daily Red every day at lunchtime, and myself and Gags will get together and do an old school now that the final is confirmed, and Gags has his plane and hotel, I believe, booked. He's just hoping now for a match day ticket, but he'll be there. I'm sure Eddie will go as well, whether he gets a ticket or not. And there'll be plenty of Anfield Index representation in Paris, because I know Harinder's going too. So, up the Reds.
Oh, it's so good. I'm just now realising that we're in the Champions League final. That kind of way I've been sort of clenching all the way through this run. And Karl, it is something to enjoy, man. It's something to hopefully bring us more happiness before the end of the season, with the opportunity, these 2 one-off games. And as Dave said, what will be with the league. But it's just ridiculously exciting. Just to get your sum up thoughts on tonight's game, and anywhere you want to go else with comments, and then let folks know at the very end what they can expect from you over the next few days ahead of the Spurs match.
Yeah, important to always, I think, bear in mind what we've said several times on this podcast, that as much as we might expect Liverpool to beat certain teams, you got to remember that the whole point of these victories is the enjoyment of the journey, the runs, the cup runs that we've had, and the chance to win trophies. So appreciate it, basically. Don't just take the fact that they are so good for granted on such a regular basis. It's been a big effort in each of the individual competitions in really different ways, but in the Champions League, obviously, especially to get to the final. You don't have a divine right to be there. You don't have the right just because you are one of the two best teams in Europe to get to the final. So absolutely make the most of the build up for it and soak it all in and take the piss out of your co-workers who support other bad sides, Do it all, because it's unbelievable what's happening with Liverpool at the moment. This has not happened for a long time for this club, and certainly not to this extent. So do make the most of it and do appreciate it and do really enjoy it, all the build-up and all the matches in the meantime. In terms of the game itself, I liked Klopp subs. I think in general, all of them were pretty good. I'm glad Curtis got a run. I'm glad Milner got to play Champions League semi-final. I think it was right that Kostas came on, because I think Robertson was maybe one of the ones who did not have their best days out. And above all else, I think at this point it is a almost right in stone must that Luis Diaz starts all of the big games which are left, including both of the finals that we've got.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because it's always nice to have the real impact from the bench. It's a lovely luxury to have, but I'd be in agreement with you there. And just to wrap it up then, for yourself, what is to come from you between now and Spurs?
We'll have the Spurs scouted, of course. I will have usual European piece before the weekend on the Indy, and I may well be compelled to write something on this game as well.
I think you should, and I look forward to reading it if you do. We are going to get out of here, folks. That was Hendrick. I've been Trev Downey. Thanks for whatever format you are doing currently. We appreciate you very much.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at anfieldindex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.